All right, good afternoon, traders. Today is April 4th, 2024. Thank you for being here. MC, let me just tell you about MC today, all right? MC, all right, MC got 29% in his trading account. 29%. All right, right up here, 29. Great day, up 29%. I don't know what to say. I'm floored. All I can say is congratulations. Job well done. I hope it was me that got you there. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and with the other people in the room. It's almost unbelievable. It's incredible. Way to go. Congratulations. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. That inspires me to keep going on day after day. All right? So today is April 4th, 2025. My name is John Kerrigan. I moderate the BYOB Trading Room. Thank you. Everybody out there in podcast land, digital land, thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for following me. Hey, thank you all my members that pay to be in this room. I don't take that lightly. I take that very seriously, and I hope to provide value every day to your trading experience. All right, let's go take a look at some charts. All right, first chart is SPY, 10 minute. All right, 10-minute downtrend going into the close. 2 hour. Yep, 2 hour downtrend going into the close. All right, daily downtrend going into the close. All right, weekly. Okay, weekly is a weekly downtrend. We broke this low, and just in case we didn't break it enough, we went off and broke this low, all right? They just want to make sure that you know that it's a downtrend. In case you were confused before, all right? They want you to know we're in a downtrend, all right? Monthly chart, I might as well look at it, right? Everything else is falling apart. Okay, so monthly, if we take out this low here, 414, wow, that's a big drop. All right, of course, I thought today was a big drop. All right, 415. If we take out that low, that's a monthly downtrend. All right. Okay, so back to the daily. All right, where are we? In the middle of the quad lines here. Okay. All right, you move up, you gave it up, and more, you're bearish. All right, way down here, bearish. All right, everybody got a nice, big, fat, long exhaustion looking like red candle today. All right, lower high, lower low, everybody. All right, lower high, lower low, closing under the trap, under the falling 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP. That's this green line right here. Under the midpoint, quadrant 1, that's bearish. All right, there's SPY. All right, we're on support, by the way. If you don't know it, we are on support. 500 is the psychological support number right here. Actually, 510 is support. All right, but we are on support right now. So we could see a bounce. We'll see. We've had lots of bounces today. Maybe they're done with it. We'll see what happens. All right, let's take a look at QQQ. All right, QQQ, same candle. All right, bearish. All right, let's take a look at FNGA. Same candle, bearish. Take a look at Diamond Dow. Yep, same candle, bearish. Let's take a look at IWM. Same candle, bearish. All right, everything bearish, everything downtrend, nothing pretty, shiny, nothing looking good right now. On the technicals, well, we camped out in I don't know how much more oversold you can get today, but let me just pick up the readings here for 0.06, 0.17, 0.18, 0.16 looks like the lowest number here in the oversold zone. I don't know if you can get any lower than that. All right, completely oversold, almost like nowhere, no place left but to go up. All right, but you know, you never know with this market. I mean, they could surprise you. So it's going to be T2123, probably going to be red all day. All right, another bearish gap down that didn't get filled. Red from beginning of the day to the end of the day, and consolidating, no V bottom here, and consolidating in the lows. Same as yesterday. Red from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and consolidating near the low of day. All right, maybe more to come on Monday. Let's take a look at T2123 3 bar. Okay, 3 more red candle bars and a whole lot of space opening up between 200 SMA and the price candles down here. Let's take a look at FNGA. All right, move down, bearish gap down, and consolidating near the low of day, kind of indicating there's probably more to come. Who knows? All right, price action underneath, falling 200 SMA. Price action underneath, all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay, we need this to be bullish if we're going to have any type of a rally. All right, actually right now, nothing positive going on. Back to some of the sectors. Start off with XLE. Okay, guess what? XLE down in quadrant 1. That's bearish. Like I said, everybody got a lower high. Everybody got a lower low. Everybody's under the trap. Everybody's under the 17. All right? Down here in quadrant 1, that's bearish. That's a downtrend. And that's bearish. All right? Let's take a look at USO. All right? Down here in quadrant 1, that's bearish. Under this 3-year high anchored VWAP right there, it's a pink line underneath the uptrend line. All right, underneath down here in quadrant 1, okay, underneath the trap, underneath the 17. Let's take a look at UNG. UNG, lower high, lower low, in a downtrend. All right, making lower lows. Closing under the trap, under the 17, but above this 12-month high anchored VWAP right there and above the uptrend line. Still no longer bullish, just neutral right here, UNG. Let's take a look at GLD. GLD, lower high, lower low, closing under a bearish cross, under a rising 17, under a prior all-time high anchored VWAP. Still making higher highs and higher lows. Still up here in quadrant 4, that's bullish. Let's take a look at SLV. Lower high, lower low, closing under the trap, under the 12-year and the 6-month high anchored VWAP right there. Okay, price action under the midpoint, under the trap, under the falling 17. Down here in quadrant 3, almost entering bearish territory. You can see we closed up here. So that's just neutral, all right? In a downtrend, by the way, all right? And no longer bullish, neutral. That's SLV, all right? Let's take a look at SMH. Lower high, lower low, closing under a trap, under the 17, under all-time high anchored VWAP, okay? Down here in quadrant 1, that's bearish. It's SMH. All right, XLK, that's the sibling to SMH. Same deal, bearish, downtrend. All right, that almost looks like a measured move. You know what I'm saying? See how it's like equal distance from here down to here? And if we could duplicate that, well, we'll try to do it another day. Anyways, I'll just see if I can grab it. Doesn't want to grab today. Oh, there it is. Yeah, measured move right there. This distance from here to here is equal to this distance from here to here. XLK. So maybe we turn around. Hopefully we V-bottom. We'll see what happens. All right, there's XLK. Let's take a look at XLF. All right, bearish. Imagine 2 days ago they were bullish. They went from the upper third to the lower third. Okay, lower high, lower low, closing under the trap, under the 17, under all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay, no longer in the upper third, no longer in the middle ground, all the way down here in the lower third. That's bearish for XLF. Let's take a look at IYT. Lower high, lower low, under the trap, under the 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP. Down here in quadrant 1, that's bearish. All right, traders, what we traded today. Let me explain what we traded today, because we traded and we made money today. All right, let's take a look at SPY. All right, right out of the gate, okay. Let me just say, yesterday, day before, yesterday, left off with a 10-minute downtrend. All we needed was a continuation candle to follow through, all right, for the downtrend. Well, we gapped down, and the first 10-minute candle right here, all right, it's a big topping wick candle. That fits my parameters, and it was red, all right. So we bought into the downtrend right there. First candle, and you can see we rode it all the way into here, okay, right into 511. Okay, reloaded at VWAP here and did it again. Right into 510. Reloaded again here at the 17. All right, and rode it all the way down to 506. Reloaded again and traded it all the way down to 505. All right, that's what we traded. Puts all day long. Took some puts here. Took some puts there, took some puts there. Red erases green, we bought some more puts. On the pullbacks, we loaded up more puts. If you look at the 10-minute downtrend, you can still see it stays intact from yesterday. See the space between the 3 EMA and the 8 EMA. See, you can see a glimpse of daylight between the two moving averages. This stayed intact all the way down to about 2 o'clock right here, about 1:30. Then we had a pullback, couldn't reach VWAP, had another almost looking like a capitulation sell-off right here. Made a lot of good money on that one. All right, with another 10-minute downtrend, guess what? Under VWAP again. All right, back to VWAP. More selling to ensue right down to close the day near the low of the day. Thanks, Peter. Thank you. All right, team. All right, I just want to say thank you, everybody. Hope you had a great day. I am here to help you. If you need help, you can contact me on Skype. All right. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for hanging out with me.